Is Workers' Party chief Pritam Singh invincible? Now, going into last Sunday's special cadre members conference, there was talk of a leadership shakeup. But as it turned out, nothing changed. Mr. Singh is still the party's leader after the WP's inner circle voted to keep him in the position. The result is the latest episode in a long, drawn-out affair that started in 2021 when former Sengkang GRC MP Raeesah Khan first lied in Parliament. Since then, Mr. Singh has been convicted of lying under oath to a parliamentary committee. He lost his appeal to the High Court and he paid a $14,000 fine. Now, in January this year, he was removed as the leader of the opposition in Parliament. Meanwhile, the WP formed its own disciplinary panel to see if Mr. Singh breached the party's constitution. It found that he did, and the party's Central Executive Committee issued him a formal letter of reprimand. That's just the last 5 years in a nutshell. Now, after all that, what did Sunday's proceedings actually mean for the WP? I'm Natasha, and welcome to another episode of The Usual Place, the podcast where we have real conversations about the headlines. Now, to help me answer all these questions that I have about the WP, I have my colleague, Tham Yuen-C, who's back again. Now, you're a senior political correspondent at the Straits Times, and you've covered the WP for about a decade now, and you've covered last weekend's proceedings quite closely, so I want to ask you your thoughts about it. But our other guest on the couch today is Dr Teo Kay Key, a senior research fellow at IPS Social Lab at the Institute of Policy Studies. Now, some of your research areas are in political and social attitudes, public opinion, and voting behavior. And you're also currently working on a long-running project about youth. Yes. So thank you both for being here. And I want to start with the question I asked at the beginning, because after all the things that have happened to Pritam, he has come out quite strong, remaining as the party's chief. Yuen-C, is he invincible?
If you mean, if by invincible, you mean that within the party, his position is quite strong, and that the people who maybe wanted to launch a challenge against him cannot challenge him in the near future, then I would say probably so.
KK, do you agree?
I think so, because after Sunday's results, it's quite clear he has a pretty strong support base in the party internally. They are very clear in, standing behind their leader publicly. So I think his standing is pretty strong.
Okay, so let's get into all of it, because a lot of people were expecting fireworks on Sunday. But because before Sunday's meeting, there was talk that some cadres would aim to unseat him. But in the end, it was kind of a bit anticlimactic. One thing that came out was that the party's former chief, Lau Tia Kiang, had quote-unquote ended his support for Pritam, right? But right before the meeting, Lau told the media that he continued to support Pritam. So did his last-minute move actually kill any opposition from within the party? And maybe if he were seen as iffy, would the anti-Pritam faction have a bit more sway? Yeah.
I believe that when he came out so unequivocally in support of Pritam, surely, that there must have been some influence in what he said. And whatever doubts people might have had within the party or outside, he put that to rest, and he was surely supporting Pritam. So I would think that there must have been some effect, some signaling effect within the party. Yeah.
But what happened between Sunday and the weeks before, when there was a lot of talk, perhaps that maybe he didn't support Pritam?
Yes, I think there was, I think there were some people in the party who believed that he might not have agreed with how Pritam handled the whole Raeesah Khan matter, that perhaps because of that, he might not support Pritam. I think there was some talk of that within the party. And so everyone was really watching to see what he might do. Yeah, and I guess eventually he came out to say that he would. Also, I feel like the fact that he might or might not agree with what Pritam did might not also mean that he will surely, vote against Pritam, because it's quite different considerations there. I mean, in this case, he also has to consider like maybe the good of the party and whether there's anyone else suitable for the post. Yeah, so I mean, Lau knows what he thought we wouldn't know, but yeah, I feel like the decisions are a bit different.
Kay Key, watching Sunday's proceedings unfold, what did you make of it?
I think that, based on whatever they told us publicly afterwards, likely the 3 hours really consisted of the cadres going to Pritam with a lot of questions and him answering to the effect where they were probably satisfied enough to vote for him to continue to support him as the leader of the WP. Also keeping in mind that, he's the leader who actually brought them into more prominence electorally. Within his term, he did manage to get a new GRC and also retain the GRC for another term. So I think that part also likely played into people's considerations when they were voting for or against him.
I mean, you see, there's still unhappy people, right? I mean, not everybody, even though he got a supermajority, not everybody voted for him. What do you know about it's a small group of people who might be disgruntled within the party? Because 25 of them signed a letter in December last year calling for this special conference on Sunday, right? How would you describe them, or who do you think they are?
I think within the party, they are known as the veterans. They are a group of long-time cadres, and they've been around for many years. And they are also the same people, some of them, who were behind Chen Shou-mao when he launched a challenge against Mr. Lau Tia-Kiang.
And this was in 2016?
16, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why are they still angry so many years later?
Well, I mean, some of them say that they're not happy about the whole Raeesah Khan issue and how it kind of dragged the party through the mud. I think that, there must have been also some unhappiness about the elections, because quite commonly in political parties, sometimes people get unhappy when they are not fielded during elections. So that can also be some of the reasons why they might be unhappy.
Kiki, what do you make of this group of people as well?
Well, I think when we look at any group or organization, it would be a bit more strange if we have everybody thinking along the same lines. And that would be something we call groupthink, where, everybody has already converged on the same viewpoint. And that actually may hurt organization more than it helps, because there will not be any consideration of the alternative perspectives. So I think having this group actually does present the leadership with a different viewpoint, and to show them that, you are not actually doing everything right all the time, or perhaps you don't have the support of 100% of the people. And that actually may help them to think about things in a different way, consider different viewpoints, and to really think a bit more about how they might want to answer their detractors when they are presenting their points of view.
So about 80% of the cadres voted to keep Pritam as the WP Sec Gen, right? So it's what they call the excess of a supermajority, as alternate GRC MP Gerald Giam put it. Actually, that's more than what Lau received when he was challenged by Chen Shou-mao in 2016, right? I think the vote share was quite different. What does that result actually tell us about Pritam's influence in the party, Kay Key?
If we look just at the numbers, then it means that, really an excess of supermajority believe that they still want him as the leader. And in that sense, when we look at it from a public's point of view, we would be like, okay, the WP is pretty united behind this leader, and they want him to continue leading the party perhaps into the next election and maybe further into the future. So I think that is what they are presenting to the public.
But does it surprise you, I mean, Yuen-C, especially if you watched them for the last 10 years, that nobody challenged Pritam for the position? I mean, there were some unhappy people, but nobody really stepped up and said.
Having said that, right, he actually has never been challenged in an internal party election. Yeah, so he has been quite strong since he took over at the helm. And I think partly it's because, as Kay Key said, his election record. Under him, the party actually gained the GRC in the 2020 general election. And even in the 2025 general election, when there was a vote swing towards the PAP, the WP managed to do pretty well. Yeah, so I think that actually many people in the party do support him and do think that he has given the party a higher profile. Yeah.
But going into how the voting went into the first meeting, right? So as I said, he went unchallenged despite some of the unhappiness. But some are saying that there are hints of a cult of personality around Pritam. Do you agree with this statement?
Well, I mean, there's no question that he's quite popular. And perhaps also, like the landscape of politics has changed, right? Like these days we have podcasts. And I think a lot of political parties, they need to send people out. They need to send people to these interviews. And so, naturally, like certain personalities will start to stand out. Yeah, so in that sense, maybe that's why people will think that there's some cult of personality around him because he's popular and so he's the person that the party will want to send out, right? Yeah.
Kay, do you agree? Do you get a sense that this like cult of personality around Pritam, that he's this big figure that they can't really let go right now?
Well, I think for the Workers' Party, because they are an opposition party, they definitely need people who are recognizable and have appeal. So Pritam is a pretty good choice because he's very charismatic and he actually can command people's attention. So in that sense, like Yuen-C said, he's quite a good choice to send out to front things publicly. I mean, internally, we are not sure because we don't really know how they interact within the CEC or the CEC with the other members. So it is very difficult to say whether internally within the party there are no other leadership figures who are also working, or contributing in their own way, but just not as publicly.
So how does this actually square with Lau's effort not to make the WP about one person or one man?
I think there are different ways to look at this. So at this point for the party's development, having someone like Pritam is a good thing for them because it helps to increase their public recognition and, there's public appeal when you have someone like him or people like him in the party representing the party. So what they will have to now look and internally do a check is to see whether they only have that one person and whether there's only one leadership figure that people will fall behind. So it's really not about, challenging the current leader, but really to have a robust internal structure where you are able to have other leadership figures who perhaps form a body of, the leadership body rather than a leader individual. And so there's also succession planning in the process.
Yeah, and we'll get back to that in a while. Yuen-C, you want to say something?
Yeah, if I can add to that, I feel like the party actually has been bringing in many very credible members, and they've been fielding, better and better slates over the years at elections. So from that, you can see that they are also making an effort to make sure that it's not just about one person, but as with any leadership renewal, I think it takes time. It takes time for people to gain experience and grow, and it will take time for the party to find someone who can maybe fill his shoes when it's time for him to leave.
So after all that, what do you think the public's perception is of Pritam right now? I mean, it's either he's garnered quite a lot of support, as we've said, on the ground, but can he do no wrong with WP supporters?
I feel like actually some people already felt that way after the election. Because during
the 2025 one?
No,
or
the
2020?
Yes, the 2025 election. Okay. Because during the election, before the election, he had already been convicted, and yet the party did well. And I think that, for some people, there was a signal that, hey, maybe this whole Raeesah Khan saga didn't really affect him, or that people didn't really care about it, or perhaps they felt like, we'll give them a chance because they are the underdog. Yeah, and I mean, after this internal election, surely with so much support from the party, I think it does send a signal, a strong signal that the party is stable, that the party is solidly behind him. And for the supporters, I feel like it definitely will make them,
continue their support of him.
Yeah.
Kay Key, agree?
Yes, I agree. So, Sunday had two meetings, right? The first one was the cadres meeting where people voted for him as the leader. So for ordinary members of the WP or even the public, they would see that, okay, this inner circle has already decided as a whole that this is the leader we are going to support. So that's the first one. And then after that, as a CEC elections results, we also see that he's re-elected. So these two results and putting it up as a headline, people who perhaps have maybe forgotten the details of the previous Raeesah Khan matter, or maybe just read the headlines of Pritam being re-elected, would also see it as an indication that, the party has chosen him as their leader, and this is where he stands.
I mean, the WP has built its own reputation as being a credible, trustworthy alternative to the PAP, right? But the message from the WP cadres after Sunday kind of seems to be something like, okay, he's convicted by the courts, but we're okay to accept the fact that he lied to the parliamentary committee and then he can still lead a party. I mean, as Pritam Singh, so this is the WP candidate for Punggol GRC last year, he wrote on social media, and I'm summarizing, that the party didn't dismiss the High Court judgment. It chose to assess Pritam's suitability to continue in the role based on his record, character, and conduct over 15 years of public life. So how would the public read into this? Like, would they think that it shows that the WP is okay to overlook a court conviction for its political stability?
I'm sure for some people it would. Yeah. So I mean, the party surely has made its calculation, when it decided to perhaps accept this risk that by endorsing him after he was convicted in court, it could affect what some voters think. But perhaps, on balance, they feel that it's more important to continue with the stability that they've had for quite many years already. And it's still some time to the next election, so you never know what may happen. Yeah.
Kay Key, do you think that this tag of him being convicted kind of affects public perception?
Perhaps to a small extent, I think. But for people who are very affected by this label, right, they are more likely to be supporters of other parties already. So that may not affect the number of votes that the WP eventually gets. And for supporters of the WP, I think they would likely again see the results of the CEC election as well as the cadres meeting as a more indicative sign of what the party is thinking, and also fall behind that. Unless they really believe that, this convicted liar label is very strong for their own personal beliefs, and they may sort of change their minds, or perhaps have a weaker support for the party overall.
I mean, you were there on Sunday at the press conference, like in person, and you asked this question about the leader of the opposition, right? And does actually removing him as from the LO position putting him through all of this actually make him stronger with voters? Like, in the sense, some people might see this as establishment bullying a opposition party.
Well, I'm sure a lot of WP supporters see it that way. And perhaps, for some people who see it as a bigger system against a small party, they might feel that way too. But as Kay Key said, there will be other people whose values maybe might not allow them to see it that way, and who might feel that the fact remains that he had gone through like a COP hearing, he had gone through a trial, and he also appealed. So, after all that, the verdict was still upheld. And so maybe that would still affect what some people think.
I mean, Kay Key, does this change anything in Parliament? Because the PAP has come out very strongly to say, he was convicted, he lied in Parliament, but now he's still there. Like, his party has said, I stand behind this man, and now they all have to go back to Parliament and, be parliamentary with him. So how do you think they'll square when Parliament next sits?
So if you look at the current organisation and structurally, there's really no change because they are still the same number of MPs in Parliament. WP is still on the opposite partisan side of the PAP. So the interactions between them parliamentarily are still going to be the same. He is still an elected member of Parliament, despite losing his LO position. So he's still going to be accorded the same speaking rights and all of that's accorded to elected parliamentarian according to the constitution. So that part will all not change. He will still have his, the right to speak whenever he applies to do so. So in that sense, I feel like structurally there will be no change. And the PAP has also made their stance very clear about what they think of, his participation in the Raeesah Khan matter. So with that aside, I think everything else would be pretty much business as usual.
I agree. Yuen-C, pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, he gets a bit less speaking time, but, even before he became leader of the opposition, he already managed to grow his profile in parliament. So perhaps, he might feel that that doesn't really affect him or his party that much.
So one of the things we mentioned earlier was that, the elections is still the next election is still a couple of years away. But given how this whole saga played out for years, actually, I don't think people will forget it so easily. It was like 5 years, Do you think that this will erode WP support around among the middle ground in future potential GRCs or SMCs that they want to contest in where voters might not be familiar with their grassroots style?
I think that as the party grows, as with any party, at some point they will lose the underdog status. And when that happens, then voters are surely going to be assessing them based on maybe slightly different measures. And perhaps, when that happens, it might affect them. But having said that, it's probably a long time more before we get there. So by then, I think people might have forgotten already about this. I mean, the AHTC saga lasted for way longer. And I think in many voters' minds, that's already a non-issue, or they just don't recall that.
Yeah, it was a very complicated law suit, right? And it just played out over many, many years.
Yeah.
So you think it didn't factor at all in the 2020 or 2025?
I wouldn't say that it didn't factor at all, but I would say that with the passage of time and other things happening, people will just not remember. Or even if they did, there might be other things that factor into their decision when they go to the ballot box and not, things that happened in the past.
Yeah. I mean, Kay Key, you're nodding is like, does party politics not factor in for the average voter when you go to the ballot box?
Well, I think in Singapore, there are a lot of other factors to consider. So for the first part, WP as a party, how they decide where to contest in is really first whether they have done a lot of grassroots work in that place for an extended period of time. So in that sense, they would already have had some familiarity with the ground and the constituents. And it will not just be Pritam fronting all these things, right? It will be their grassroots volunteers and the people that are going to put up for election eventually. So these connections or these familiarity would also factor into the minds of the constituents who are voting, because they're going to be voting for those people who are standing for election in that constituency and not just for Pritam. So that factor, I think, would be quite strong beyond any whole of party factors like maybe the HTC issue as well as the Raeesah Khan issue.
Yuen-C, you had a commentary out today. I will link it in the comment section below. But in your commentary that you wrote, you say that the Raeesah Khan saga is now settled within the party, right? But are we really done? Is this the end of it?
Well, if you remember, I think there was some talk in Parliament that the WP chairwoman, Sylvia Lim, and also former MP Faisal Manap, they might still be held to account over it. So, perhaps it's not over yet. We wouldn't know. But within the party, certainly, I think this draws a line and it's over.
Okay. Kay Key, what do you think? Like, is this the end for Pritam? Is he done dealing with this saga now?
I think for the Raeesah Khan matter within the party, it seems like it has run the due process where they go according to the constitution, the party's constitution, on what can be done and what can be requested for from the leadership. And it has all gone through the processes and they have ended it with the vote. So with that in mind, I think party internal matters, it's a close case.
All right. So we've established a couple of things today. I think, Kay Key, you mentioned that it's going to be business as usual for everyone when they sit in Parliament next week. And Yuen-C, we've also learned that from the WP, I guess sometimes it's about personal views that are going to take a backseat to party politics. For the greater good of the party, sometimes personal politics takes a backseat.
I guess in any political party, not just the WP.
All right. On that note, thank you both for being here and thank you for the insights today. And that's it from The Usual Place. Now, if you're watching us on YouTube, do subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you won't miss new episodes of the podcast. And if you have thoughts on what we just discussed, do drop a comment on YouTube or talk to me on Instagram at The Usual Place Podcast. I'll see you next Thursday.